The views expressed on this program are those of the producers and individuals appearing on this program and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Sun Prairie Media Center staff, its video service providers, or the staff and elected officials of the City of Sun Prairie.
Hello and welcome to Real Reviews. My name is Jameson Rabbit, and the man seated next to me this week has a favorite swear word, but he's not going to tell you what it is. His name is Mike Roth.
I can't tell you what it is. It's against the rules.
Yeah?
But I have been watching a program on Netflix, A History of Swearing with Nick Cage, and I highly recommend it. You get to learn a little bit about what you thought was just crass that comes out of your mouth. It makes you feel smarter when you're using the blue language.
I like using son of a Von Drook.
Ooh.
Yeah, I know. That
there
slips
was
by.
a time where people would probably stone you for saying something like that.
We are not in that time, sir. So this week we have a really fun show. We get to look back on 2020 and talk about a bunch of movies that disappointed us. But first, we're going to talk about some movies that hopefully didn't disappoint. And I'm going to get us started with what we have on the marquee this week. And it is a film called Promising Young Woman from director Emerald Fenton. Stars Carey Mulligan as a girl named Cassie. Cassie is a lady who we find puts herself in vulnerable situations, pretends to be inebriated in hopes to lure guys in. She kind of uses herself as bait, and these guys inevitably try and take advantage of her, and that is when she springs into action. Remember that movie Hard Candy a couple years ago that we reviewed? Yeah. Kind of like that. She's like, oh, by the way, you are a dirtbag, and dirtbags have to pay. Mm-hmm. She kind of uses her sexuality to take advantage of dumb guys and get revenge on them. She's very much a chameleon in this movie, and it's really interesting to watch. And we see that she's been doing this for a while because she has a book that is filled with tally marks. But why? That's the question throughout a good chunk of this movie. Why is she doing this?
But you know from the previews.
Well, kind of. She meets this guy who seems like a genuinely nice guy named Ryan, played by Bo Burnham, who used to be in med school with her years before she dropped out. And he always had a crush on her, and he runs into her and seems like a nice guy, and you really want to root for him. Come on, man, be the one good one, right? Mm-hmm. And things start to progress with them, but the question kind of lingers, like, is she capable of having a normal relationship with a guy? Because she abuses them. And he kind of represents part of her past, a past that we slowly start to find out about, and is kind of the genesis for this behavior that she's taken on. Mm-hmm. And she's been seeking revenge against men in general who represent her pain, and certain people in particular who did terrible things to her best friend Nina when they were in college. And she's a bit diabolical in this movie and very clinical in the way she goes about getting her revenge. Mm-hmm. It's pretty wild. It's a pretty wild performance. It's an interesting idea. There's a lot of things that it doesn't fully explore, though, because it does deal a lot with the trauma of the sexual abuse that was suffered and people not reporting and the kind of victim blaming that took place. Mm-hmm. And those are just kind of lightly touched on, and then we move on to the next thing.
Was it teasing or just...
No. I mean, like, it was hit on, and like each person she went after for revenge kind of represented a different part of that.
Okay.
But it just was kind of done with not a heavy touch, and maybe that's for the best in this type of movie, maybe because it is more like this revenge story, and it's fun. There's funny parts of the movie, you know. Okay. It's not like big doldrums. In it. The thing I did like is it doesn't just kind of hang its hat on being like the female revenge genre, like Peppermint a couple years ago with Jennifer Garner was. Yeah. Like, I'm seeking revenge, and that's the entire movie. And, there's no depth to it. I liked it. Carey Mulligan is great in this. Like, she's a true chameleon in this movie. She's all over the place. She's more like a Joker than you would expect.
And coincidentally, I remember watching these previews
Yeah.
for this movie back when Birds of Prey was
Sure.
on, and I was thinking, oh, this is really soon after this. It kind of goes with, but now we're watching it in January.
Yeah,
But,
right.
it's just this year
Yeah.
to do that.
It's a lot of just like dealing with the bro culture of college age and that stuff, and it's good. It gets a little choppy in there, especially towards the end. It gets kind of choppy, but then it has this interesting ending of it that I didn't expect. I'm not sure if it was good or bad. I still haven't quite figured out if that ending fully works for me. But it's an interesting movie, and she's really good in it. And there's some other actors. Alison Brie's really good in this. But it's an enjoyable flick, and it's more than just the revenge tale that you might expect. So, promising young woman. I give 3.5 stars to.
Nice.
Worth checking out. So, what do you have for us, sir?
I have Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always, directed and written by Eliza Hittman. It is pretty much a two-person show throughout the whole thing. We have Autumn, who is Sydney Flanagan, played by Sydney Flanagan. She is 17, and her life is not really good in this small town. A lot of rumors being spread around her at high school. The boys tease her for being promiscuous. She has a bad relationship at home. Her mother, played by Sharon Van Etten, which I was really surprised because I love her music and see her as an actress, but she was a real small part. What is her father or maybe stepfather? There seems to be a lot of problems with him, and when she goes to work, it seems like a constant thing of sexual harassment. She is not feeling well, and her best friend Skylar notices this, and they find out that she is pregnant and definitely does not want to keep the baby. She cannot get the procedure done in Pennsylvania because the rules would have her go to her parents. So her and Skylar venture out to New York City, where the rules are a little bit more relaxed about abortion. It's not as easy as you would think. They don't have good transportation. They have to take a bus. They don't have a lot of money. They hit roadblocks over and over again. It turns into kind of a terrible adventure where they have to stay overnight in New York City without any money for 3 nights in a row, and how they kind of survive that. Meanwhile, everywhere they go, they have problems with being harassed by others. For the most part, there's a lot of quiet moments in here, which it sometimes makes them feel a little aloof. And it was hard to connect to characters because it felt like they were holding back on their lines instead of just the progression of thought. It is an extremely powerful movie, and the namesake, Never, Rarely, Sometimes After, actually got me crying. It was so traumatic watching this. It was terrible. But in a good way, where it pulls out emotion and makes you think.
Well, and the namesake is from the questionnaire that the nurse asks about her past.
Yeah.
And abuse and all of these things, answer how you like with these. And that's the scene that got me the most, was because a lot of the time, Sydney Flanagan is kind of reserved in how she's out there. And that's the moment where you realize she's a 17-year-old girl who's scared in a big city, away from home. The only support is her friend, who doesn't know any more than she does. And suddenly, that was the moment where I could see in her eyes, she was just a kid.
Yeah.
They're asking questions, and she's like, I don't know. I've never done, I don't know this or that. And you realize she's just a scared kid.
Yeah.
And doesn't want her parents to find out that she screwed up. And there's some powerful moments, and I think the chemistry between the two of them, between Autumn and Skylar, was good.
Yeah.
I liked the two of them working together, trying to figure out life alone in the big city in a scary moment, doing something that's equally terrifying.
Yeah, that's terrifying for adults with money, much less someone who's not even from that state.
Right.
Totally afraid that she's going to get caught, totally afraid that she's going to get injured further than what she is, but even more terrified of having the baby in the first place.
Right. There was another film earlier this year that I don't know if you saw. I remember I reviewed, called Unpregnant.
Yeah.
similar, where a girl got pregnant and she had to travel to Arizona, I believe it was, like across country to have a procedure. And because of state laws, blah, blah. Only that one turned into like a comedic road trip.
Yeah.
Did not deal with things in the way this one did. This one was much more somber in how it dealt with it. But it wasn't solely about just the abortion.
No.
It was more about the two of them and the enormity of their situation and the people they had to deal with. And it was very interesting to me.
The only part that I really didn't care for, that I wish they would lighten up on, is every male role in this was skeezy.
They needed a promising young woman to come in and clean up the act.
They did. I mean, even down to a couple of people at the grocery store.
Yeah, exactly.
They had this weird guy that would make
come
out with
party
their
with me?
hands every time they stuck their hand to give out the cash. The manager was creepy. Every male role. And I get how...
A lot of creepy dudes
There
out
is a lot of creepy dudes, but it's not all guys are like that. And
I hope.
I don't think I am.
I haven't checked your Wikipedia lately. I don't know if that's on
I've
there.
been nice. People tell me I'm nice.
People tell me this. What did you give Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always?
I give it a 4. It is a really good movie. I definitely check it out.
Yeah, I gave it a 4 as well. It's over on HBO Max right now. We both recommend it. It's one of the better movies we've seen lately.
Yeah.
Deals with the subject matter really well.
Little fact, Sydney Flanagan, this is her first time in any acting role. She beat out hundreds of other actors who are going for this. So this is her debut.
That's pretty good.
And she did fantastic.
Yeah.
Like I said, a little aloof, but when it got to that Never, Rarely, Sometimes After questionnaire, that was all her.
Yeah.
And that was...
That's good to know. I didn't know
emotion.
that. Nice. Yeah. Very impressive. The next film I have for us, sir, is a film from Taiwan. It's a film called A Son, from director Mong Hong Chung. Stars Chin Ho Woo as a kid named Aho. Aho is this young man who early in the film is sent to prison because he's part of a brutal machete attack on a young man along with his friend Radish. The movie basically opens with him cutting the arm off of this kid. And the hand falls into the soup.
Oh, boy.
And it's, so he is sent to prison. Both of them are sent to prison. And he's brought immense shame on his family. And his father basically disowns him. His father, Awen, disowns him, refuses to admit that he has a second son. While Aho is in prison, a girl comes to his older brother to tell him that she's pregnant with Aho's child. And this doesn't help matters within the family either. Meanwhile, the father of the machete victim is harassing Awen, the father, constantly for money. You know, you should give me money. My child's missing an arm, blah, blah, blah. And it's this drama about family and shame and pride. And everything kind of rolls together to form this brutal fracture within a family because you also have Aho's parents. The mom still goes and sees him in prison. The dad disowns him completely. And then at one point, it leads to the death of the older son, the favored son. And this only makes things even more terrible because the father blames Aho for that loss. And there's just so many emotions in this movie. A lot of it deals with the hidden pain and jealousy and bitterness and self-loathing within families. And everyone in this family is suffering in one way or another. And Aho feels he can't escape Radish. Even when he gets out of prison, Radish is there, luring him back into this terrible life of crime and stuff. And he knows that he's bringing shame on his family, and he's disappointing everyone that he knows, but he has a hard time getting out. The father's filled with shame over his son, and he's also ashamed in his failings as a father because he let his son become this. And it's an emotional movie, but it has moments of comedy built in as well, like perfectly timed. Right when it starts to get a little too intense, somebody will show up with a tanker truck full of poo and spray it around as revenge.
You know, you throw poo into something, it's going to make it funny. That's the first time I've seen that trailer. So
it makes it like not unbearably heavy in what is a very heavy movie.
Yeah.
And it kind of builds to this climax. This climax at the end of the movie literally had me in tears because I didn't see it coming. It it blew me away. Yeah, it was. I was very surprised by how it wrapped up.
Was it sorrowful, happy, frustrating?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. There was a lot of emotions in the last 8 minutes of this movie.
And this movie is South Korean, right?
It is Taiwanese.
Taiwanese.
It is. This is the film that Taiwan has put up for the 2021 Academy Awards.
Okay.
This is their entry for Best Foreign Language Film.
And I probably don't know if they have a shot until you give me a review of that. Like,
yeah, I don't know. We'll see.
That's a segue.
But A Son, I give a solid 4.5 stars to.
Nice.
4 3/4 if I had to, but yeah, A Son is a really, really good movie. It's sitting over on Netflix too, and I highly recommend checking it out if you don't mind those subtitles.
I'll have to give it a try.
I recommend it. Speaking of great movies that 2020 brought us that we just couldn't get enough of.
I'm feeling like you're lying.
Okay.
We're not going to be speaking of great movies.
Sure. Well, movies that maybe, some of them maybe we hoped were going to be great, and maybe that plays into why they're on this list. But we are taking some time here to look back on 2020. And there's good and there's bad. Yeah. But we always say this time of year, nothing is worse than disappointing.
Yeah.
Bad movies are bad movies. We watch plenty of bad movies through the year. Mm-hmm. But disappointing is worse because you get your hopes up and it turns out not to be good.
And not to be a surprise to anybody out there, but it's been a very disappointing year for many reasons.
So yeah, Mike and I want to talk about our top 5 individual most disappointing films for the year, and then we'll get into what we thought was just the worst film, period, out of the entire year. But I want you to get started, sir, with your number 5 most disappointing film.
Number 5 most disappointing film, I actually gave a decent review to. It was Trolls World Tour. I gave it a 3.5. It's a movie with Poppy and Branch and bringing back the whole team. The very first one I've watched many times over without children. Mm-hmm. I liked the first movie a lot.
Yeah.
I forget what the score is, but I feel like now it's a 5 because I've watched it a lot.
It was in your top 10 a few years ago.
Yeah. And this one came off meh. I mean, not meh. It was good. I enjoyed it. It's a 3.5. But it didn't have the same power as that first film. And then they further disappointed me because it went on streaming. They bragged about how much money they made. And then you found out that they didn't pay a lot of people because it never had a theatrical release.
So sorry, we're not paying you.
So not only was it not as good as I expected, but then they became complete jerks afterwards. Yeah. And it kind of started the role of being a jerk when it comes to streaming movies.
Exactly.
All right.
I fully accept that. Absolutely. My number 5 most disappointing film is a film that I just plain did not like. And I was hopeful more for the cast than anything else, but it's Fantasy Island. Fantasy Island was early in 2020. Michael Pena coming in as Mr. Rourke. And there is a tattoo in this movie. It's revealed late in the film, and it's a huge groaner. But the movie is, the Fantasy Island, the monkey paw type of thing, where you want to wish. We'll grant your wish, but there's a catch, and the catch is it's a terrible movie, and it was really bad, and it was at a time last year where I was looking for something good to watch, and thought this might pan out in like the first 10, 15 minutes. I was like, all right. Let's do this. And then it quickly fell apart.
I was looking forward to this movie. I was going to watch it until you gave the review.
Yeah.
And then I didn't.
I
don't see how you could go wrong with that monkey paw idea. I mean, really.
Talk about that in a few minutes, sir. Your number 4 most disappointing film, though.
Number 4, Birds of Prey. This is the only one on my list that I saw at the theaters. I kind of like the Academy Award winning movie.
Get it right.
It's Suicide Squad. And it grew on me, and I was kind of hoping for the same kind of fun with Birds of Prey, and really it was a mess. The storyline didn't go very well. There's too many characters. We didn't dive into the characters. The bad guys, again, typical of the DC lately, is just have a bad guy, but don't give any backstory so that they don't become interesting. This was directed by Kathy Yan, and it was bad.
Yeah.
It was bad. I gave it a 2.
Oof, disappointing. Birds of Prey. My number 4 is a film that we just talked about a few weeks ago. It's Ron Howard's latest film, Hillbilly Elegy. You got Glenn Close, You got Amy Adams. You got a whole host of great, Haley Bennett, just great actors, actresses in this film. And it just didn't work. Despite Glenn Close being great and unrecognizable almost in this, the movie itself was really bad. And I put the cast and Ron Howard, who normally I enjoy, all together. And it was very disappointing. It was not a cohesive film at all, and I found it very unenjoyable. So it made my number 4 most disappointing film of the year.
Would you like to know my 3?
I would love to.
Drunk Parents.
Yes.
I gave this a 0. It's the only 0 that I gave this year, as far as I know.
It was.
Directed by Fred Wolf, I was expecting something funny. I really like Jim Gaffigan. I didn't like Playmobil, but I figured, that was a cartoon. Maybe when he is real, I'm going to really like him. And it was, again, a mess. The story did not flow. They made extreme decisions, like bad decisions.
Sure.
Alec Baldwin. I like Alec Baldwin. This was terrible. There was nothing good.
I like Jim Gaffigan in this movie. He made me laugh. I'll say it again.
I will give a point or even a half a point. If there's something in there that redeems it for that half a point, I gave it a 0.
You did. Yeah, you did. I think it was punitive, but it's not a good movie. I'll agree with you on that.
And I'm just going to say the end. What's your 3?
My number 3 is another film that it was based on a book series that my children really loved. That I was looking forward to. And came out on Disney Plus. It's a film called Artemis Fowl.
Ooh.
Yeah, good cast. Looks interesting. I was sold on it. And this movie was incoherent, just garbage. It didn't look great. It looked second rate in a lot of moments that it shouldn't have. And it told a story that didn't make any sense. It was strayed completely from the heart of what Artemis Fowl is. And it was just plain bad. So it made my number 3 most disappointing. Sir, I point to you. You're number 2.
Artemis Fowl wins again. I remember watching the previews on this, and it looked fun and fantastic and bright and exciting. And then you watch it, and for an adventure, they don't go anywhere.
Yeah.
You had a little bit of going to the fairy world, and that was kind of uninteresting, but the most of it just plays around this bubble inside Artemis Fowl's house, and it was just dumb. And then they would reveal things later that I'm sure they had in depth in the book, but when you just kind of mention it later, ooh, this important relationship, it's like, no,
I have not spoken to one
work.
person who enjoyed the books that has anything nice to say about this movie. To a man, everyone's like, that was awful.
Yeah,
not good. Artemis Fowl, a 2-time nominee. Congratulations.
Are we going to get any more pair-ups, you think?
We'll see. My number 2 most disappointing movie of the year was based solely on one of the actors in this movie. Had me excited because he had been on a good run of consistent great roles. And I'm talking about Shia LaBeouf in the film The Tax Collector this year. I was excited. There was all these stories about Shia went out and got a chest tattoo. Oh, he's fully committed, blah, blah, blah. And this movie was awful. I believe I gave it 1 star, maybe. And the 1 star was really just for him because the rest of the movie around him was atrocious.
And I don't really like Shia LaBeouf. So
I do. I enjoy him, but boy, oh boy. He could not save anything in this movie. He didn't have hardly anything to do. And it was a really bad movie. And worse, I paid a bunch of money to rent this thing. It was one of those. I was excited enough. Yeah, I'll drop that price.
Yep.
Let me no, thank you. Tax Collector, bad movie. Very disappointing. Time, for our number 1 most disappointing movies of 2020. Sir, I turn to you.
I'd had to do a drum roll on the table. Yeah. We just talked about this.
Yeah.
Wonder Woman 1984. I've been looking forward to this for a long time. The very first movie was 5-star. I gave it 5-star. It's the only thing that's really super salvageable out of the DC universe where you could point at it and go, that was fantastic. So when 1984 is going to be coming out, I was excited. And due to COVID, it got pushed back and pushed back. I wasn't sure if I was going to see it this year, and then it got released. My anticipation is high.
Yeah.
It looks like a beautiful movie.
That's it.
How can they go wrong with a Monkey Paw movie? I don't get it.
And that's, okay, so I'm going to just co-sign. That's also my number 1.
Nice.
It was very easy. This list started easy at the top. Like, okay, we just put Wonder Woman #1. Let's move on, because the anticipation to the delivery level was such a gap from what you were hoping for, expecting. Like the bare minimum, it's going to be this.
Yeah.
And we got so far below that, and it was such a mess, and the pacing and the writing and everything was so bad. And how can we miss? Patty Jenkins has been great. The first one was amazing. And it was not.
And then it was 2.5 hours. So it really pounded how bad it was.
I sat in the beautiful Palace Dream Lounger, and that didn't even save it for me. It was still a real mess of a film, and that is why it is #1 for both of us.
I do have an honorable mention. It is not a movie. It is COVID. COVID has really screwed up the movie year, and is the reason why we got a lot of these bad movies this year. And there's tons of movies I still did not get to see. I didn't see Coming Back to America. I didn't see the Ghostbusters.
Eventually.
Hey, but
this year's going to be much better. Trust me.
Yeah.
Before we get out of this, though, sir, I do want to talk about very quickly. We saw a bunch of movies this year, but what was the single? I know the answer to this. What was the single worst movie you saw this year?
I've already mentioned it. It's Drunk Parents. Drunk Parents is a complete steaming pile of garbage. So don't watch it. Uncorked, Unhinged. It is bad.
Mine was the film I gave the lowest score to this year. It was a film called The Last Days of American Crime.
Oh, that was bad.
From director Olivier Megaton. His disaster starring Edgar Martinez about government broadcasting a signal that will stop crime. But then there's one last bank heist before it all goes down. And that movie was a dumpster fire of a film.
I didn't finish it.
I don't blame you. It was horrible. That's why it's my worst movie. I'll just say, I just finished my rankings. I ranked every movie I saw this year. 192 films. That was 192 right there. Not good.
Is your number getting bigger every year?
No, last year was over. It was like 230.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Okay. It was a down year this year. I don't know why. Something happened. I don't know. Anyways, those are the movies that disappointed us, that were horrible. We don't recommend you checking out. But next week, we might be talking about something different. But before we get into that, I want to talk about what's coming soon. The weekend, sir, of January 15th, we have a few movies. First one on Netflix, a film called Outside the Wire. Stars Anthony Mackie as a drone pilot who finds himself paired with an android officer on a mission to stop a nuclear attack.
This sounds 80s. Did he get this from the 80s?
He might have. It was an Alien Nation knockoff or something. I don't know. We'll see. The next one is over on Hulu. It's a film called The Ultimate Playlist of Noise, about an audio-obsessed high school senior who has to have brain surgery that will render him deaf. So he creates the ultimate playlist of noise. I don't know how that works out.
He's not going to hear it.
Maybe he's, I don't know. I don't know how it works.
Okay, cool. We'll have to watch to find out.
We also have in theaters next week, The Marksman, Liam Neeson, is a rancher who defends a young Mexican boy from the cartel. It's basically the last Rambo movie.
Does he have a family member that's
I am hoping he does.
hostage?
I'm hoping. And we'll also have perhaps a throwback segment, or maybe a most anticipated. Hey, I could probably just take last year's most anticipated list and roll it on over.
On there.
But that is all happening the weekend of January 15th. Before we leave, we want to thank our sponsor, though, the wonderful people, Tom and his gang of friends over there at Marcus Theaters Palace Cinema. Thank you for sponsoring this program. The lights are on, the popcorn is popping, and the films are being shown in a safe manner. So if you want to go check it out, they're there waiting for you. Just go on the app and order your tickets. All hands-free. You don't have to touch anybody. So thank you for always sponsoring this program. Next week, sir, we have a few things to talk about. We have a film called One Night in Miami, which is a fictional account of a night in Miami with a bunch of civil rights leaders.
Okay.
Sounds really interesting. Yeah. We also have Pieces of a Woman, which I will tell you stars Vanessa Kirby and Shia LaBeouf, about a woman who's lost her baby and spends a year navigating through fractured relationships.
Okay.
And then the best part is next week is also our best of 2020 episode, our 10 best movies of the year.
If you feel like building up to that show, we do have over a week straight of programming you could download and watch. You will never have to see a rerun. You will never have to sleep.
Check out 351 straight episodes if you're crazy. But all that's going to be happening next week. But until that time, I'm Jameson.
I'm Mike Roth.
Thanks for watching.